So I understand what Dan Miragliotta was doing. He was attempting to work in the best interest of the fighter and making Stefan Struve aware of the situation. But at the same time, it ultimately cost him the fight, and I think he crossed the line. Not maliciously, not with any ill intent, but he definitely stepped over a line there. I understand that he was trying to make Stefan Struve aware of the fact that most likely he was ahead on the scorecards, but if he allowed the fight to end at that point by not being able to continue, he was going to go to a no contest. We could consider it should have been a disqualification for Ben Rothwell. At the same time, you try and give fighters the benefit of the doubt. They're tired, they're big, they're moving. You're throwing strikes at a moving target. It's liable, and especially with Stefan Struve's height, his groin's in a different spot than most people. Let's tell it like we see it. But the fact of the matter is, it just was an unfortunate scenario, and Dan should have just said, you know what, he has to make a decision on his own to the best of his ability. Ultimately, and again, maybe Struve was going to continue regardless, and Miragliotta just happened to say that, and it just seemed like he influenced the outcome of the fight. Ben Rothwell finishing the fight, which worked out for us in the end. But again, it's just an unfortunate situation, and I'm sure Dan feels very, upset about it, or at least, recognizes that he probably shouldn't do that in the future. We'll have to, wait and see if anything comes of it. Regardless, welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions, and on this episode of the show, we are breaking down the massively anticipated UFC 245, which will go down December 14th from the T-Mobile Arena in Paradise, Nevada. It will feature not one, not two, but 3 UFC title fights, in addition to a couple other former champions going at it on the main card. I'll be giving you all of my predictions on this episode of the show. All of my preliminary picks will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net, so make sure you check them out. The bet packs, I am coming off a fantastic show. Now, it was controversial to say the least. I went 10-0-2 at UFC on ESPN 7. First time I've gone undefeated in a long time. Now, that's, albeit there were a number of heavily favored fighters coming through, and it's unfortunate that 2 of my key fighters on the night, Cynthia Calvillo and Song Yadong both fought a majority draws. We were kind of saved by the draws in those situations. I thought Calvillo, battled back nicely and did deserve a 10-8 in the final round. I thought she could have finished her. I was very disappointed to see Calvillo basically go devoid of the second round, even the first round when she was fresh of takedowns. Had she committed to her wrestling, I think she wins that fight going away. I thought Song Yadong outright won it, and was a robbery the fact he did not get outright lost the fight. I thought it was a robbery that Cody Stamann was not awarded a victory in that matchup, especially with the point lost. It almost reminded me of, Alejandro Perez and I think it was Alberto Morales fought. Was it Morales? And that was just a very interesting situation that ended with a majority draw, I believe, as well, based with a point deduction. Just a weird scenario there. But when you go back and look at it, you go, had Song not had that loss at point, he would have won the fight. Those 28-28s were actually 29-28s for him, and Calvillo was very close to winning it as well. So I could have gone 12-0. I could have very well gone 12-0 nonetheless. My bet packs did amazing. What a great way to finish the year, get close to finishing the year. My HBC 75 unit profit, my CBC 158 unit profit. So again, CBC is the casual betting cluster, where I bet for casual fans who want to invest $50 to $100, and then my HBC is more for the grinder, the hardcore betting cluster. Huge wins. We've had done fairly well in recent times. You can see the results on my website. I don't win every night. Certainly, I go through slumps. My style is different, and again, if you're new to my channel, you'll know that. My units are not like other people's units. My units aren't traditional. Where essentially you set the unit, and if you want to set the unit at $5 a unit, because you got $150 and that's what you want to bet, then you base it on that. So again, that's the simple math. It's not the traditional way of doing it. I've been talking, people at this point kind of are recognizing it, have come to understand why I do it my way. Again, not everyone agrees, but at least they understand why I do it, and that's why my units look the way they do. It was a good night overall. The bet pack's $15. We'll be looking to run the table again here, or at least have some semblance of similar success. We'll see if that turns out. Available in the bet shop for $15, or you can subscribe to the final 2 events of the year and save a little bit of cash. Follow me on Twitter. We are rolling up. We're over 500. I think we're at 520 Twitter followers now, which is fantastic. Very much enjoying that. Lots of new people on board. Greatly appreciate it. So welcome to all of you. Make sure if you haven't already followed me on Twitter at KO_predictions, please do so. And like and subscribe on my channel as well. I always appreciate it. Like this video, subscribe to my channel, all the other fun stuff. Share the video, all that crap that helps you promote it. I greatly appreciate it. And on that rambling note, we have 5 amazing fights to get to. Oh, one more point. The elusive march to 300 wins in a calendar year. I'm close. Last year, if you recall, I went into the final event of the year at 293, and I shit the bed. Only 3 more victories. Currently, I'm sitting at 286. I have 2 events, so I have to average 7 wins over the last 2 events. Now, mind you, there have been a few more fights this year. I'm right now 286 and 185 to 61% accuracy rate for the year. Last year I went 296 and 166, 64%. Still, let's see how it turns out. I'm trying to get to that 300. I'm going to set that as a goal regardless, and we'll see how things go. On that note, let's get to the first main card prediction. Our first fight of the pay-per-view goes down in the UFC's bantamweight division as former WEC champion and UFC title contender Urijah, the California Kid Faber, currently ranked 12th, the record of 34 wins and 10 losses, takes on Russia's Petr No Mercy Jan, currently ranked 4th in the division with a very impressive 12-1 record. Now, Faber is taking his second fight since announcing his retirement, or coming back from his retirement, actually. He shocked many, including myself, with a knockout of Ricky Simón in his return bout. He was a huge underdog. He's actually coming in now. He has back-to-back wins, going back to the Pickett retirement fight victory. Prior to that, he had a 1-4 stretch, which ultimately pushed him towards retirement. For Petr Yan, 5-0 in the UFC. He has won 8 in a row overall since a split decision loss. The only loss of his career, quite a nice rebound. And when you look at his UFC competition, he's had a very nice escalation of competition. Douglas DeAndrade, followed by John Dodson, followed by Jamie Rivera. Very impressive. Now Faber, who some might suggest is a step sideways or back from some of that previous competition, especially if you consider what's happened recently. Nonetheless, it's a big name, it's a huge name, and a big fight for him. Physically, Jan 1 inch taller, same reach, 14 years younger though. Jan is 14 years younger than Faber, which is massive. We'll talk about that in a minute. Now, Jan is absolutely moving towards the title shot. His name's already been mentioned. He needs another win, maybe 2 to get there. But there's a chance that this victory could be enough. Faber is a former WEC champion, former title contender, huge name. If Jan puts him away in impressive fashion, we might see him fighting for a title next time out. With Faber, he's coming off a high-profile win. He's a big name himself. If he pulls off another upset here, knowing that he's 40 years old in a position where he doesn't know how much time he actually has left, he could be given a shot at the title as well. He's a big name for a guy like Henry Cejudo to face off with, and I think that'd be a cool fight, especially in a fight night main event. I'd really like to see that. Showcase the division, give the fans a title fight on live television. But either way, the winner of this is in a good spot moving forward. Now, if you look at MMA math, Jimmy Rivera dominated Urijah Faber 4 years ago. The last time Urijah Faber lost a fight in 2016, Jimmy Rivera absolutely smoked him. Just outclassed him. I don't want to say smoked him, outclassed him. 6 months ago, Petr Yan defeated Jimmy Rivera and did it fairly handily as well. Even though the striking numbers wouldn't suggest it, it was a pretty wide decision for Petr Yan as far as I'm concerned. So MMA math right there would suggest Yan, and the odds suggest as well, is a massive favorite, and rightfully so. Now, when you look at Faber, with that break, could we suggest that he simply needed a break for his body and his mind to heal and get back on track? Is that what we saw? I don't know. It's a great question. For the Ricky Simón knockout, was his first knockout win since WEC 25 back in 2007 against Joe Pearson. Does that suggest it was a lucky punch? I don't know. Quite possibly. Considering some of his TKO wins came on the mat, he's not exactly known for one-punch knock, dropping guys on the feet. He did face an overly aggressive opponent, and keep in mind, Faber was stunned moments before, so Simón's confidence could have gone through the roof, and his defensive approach, just disappeared altogether, and he walks into the fight-changing blow. Now, when you look at Faber, as I previously mentioned, the guy's 40 years old. That is old for MMA. That is ancient for the bantamweight division. Fighters do not linger in your late 30s and 40s, at the top of the game no less, in the lighter weight classes. It's just speed and technique and timing are so important. It's very difficult to remain competitive. The heavier divisions, absolutely, you can still be relevant as you age into 40 and beyond. Now, we have to ask ourselves, how does Urijah Faber win this fight? He absolutely could land another big shot. Could he put Yan down with a big shot like he did Ricky Simón? It's a low percentage option, but I certainly think it's something that could be there. I would think his best avenue to victory here is to go to his wrestling. Yan was taken down by Jinsu Sun. He was taken down twice by John Dodson, and Urijah Faber in the UFC is 6-0 when he lands at least 2 takedowns or more. Conversely, he's 5-6 when he lands 1 takedown or less. So his takedown game is crucial to his success. He can win fights without it, but he's putting himself in a better position to win fights when he lands takedowns. Now, on the feet, Faber isn't a big volume striker. He has a little bit of pop, as we said. He needs to be faster and more creative than his opponent to have success on the feet. If he's forced to stand without takedowns, he usually lands between 30 and 50 significant strikes, 50 being usually his usual ceiling. Jan's coming off a 56-strike fight against Jimmy Rivera, which kind of put him on the low end of things. Prior to that, 76, 180. I would expect to see him in that range, somewhere, above 70 significant strikes, maybe even closing in on 100. Yan overall is the more natural striker. He's faster, he hits harder, he's got the more conventional and solid technique. Faber, I think, again, he either needs to KO him or ground him / submit him. Those are his avenues to victory. For Jan, work his volume, keep a steady pace, keep his technique sound, fight within himself, and he can finish him with his hands or win a decision either way. I think ultimately Jan has a higher percentage scenario to win this matchup, more scenarios to win this fight. He's more likely to it's just more likely that he's going to win this fight in most the ways it plays out than Faber will. I think he's quicker than Faber. Simone hurt Faber before he ultimately got finished, and I think Jan will be able to as well. He's going to walk in there, he'll put some hands on him, he'll hurt him that way. He'll keep coming forward. I don't think Faber's going to find that strike, and my prediction is Petr Yan to defeat Urijah Faber by knockout. Remaining with 135 pounders, we have former UFC featherweight champion Jose Aldo, 28-4-0, making his jump or descent, if you will, down to bantamweight to take on former WSOF champion, former UFC title challenger Marlon Magic Moraes, currently ranked number 1 in the division with a record of 22 wins, 5 losses, and 1 draw. Now, Moraes had won 4 in a row prior to his loss to Henry Cejudo for the title. He's 4-2 in the UFC overall. Prior to joining the UFC, 13 consecutive wins and multiple title defenses for WSOF, a highly touted fighter outside of the UFC. And again, showing why since he's come to the promotion. Very impressive. For Jose Aldo, coming off a loss against the man at featherweight who's fighting the title in Alexander Volkanovski. He had back-to-back wins over Renato Moicano and Jeremy Stephens, both by stoppage prior to that loss. And then before that, losses, 2 of them to Max Holloway, beat Frankie Edgar, lost to Connor. He had a 3-4 stretch that followed his 18-fight win streak. Very impressive run. Physically, Aldo 1 inch taller, 3-inch reach advantage. He is 2 years older than his fellow Brazilian, and I said he's cutting the bantamweight for the first time. Now, a couple of things we got to take note of. The first is the fact that Moraes trains with Frankie Edgar, a guy who's fought Aldo twice, who's trained for Aldo on multiple occasions. So there is some familiarity with Edgar, with that camp, and Moraes, and they know what to expect when Aldo gets in there. At least he'll have some, expert first-hand experience to build upon. That's worth noting. Now, there are 2 key scenarios when you look at this. The first of which is the fact that Aldo's cutting down to bantamweight. He was not a small featherweight. In fact, he had issues sometimes making the weight, and then he contemplated going up to lightweight, and now he's down to 135 pounds, which to many is shocking. Pictures have surfaced of him on the internet looking lighter, looking a little drawn out, and some people say, he looks terrible. Conor McGregor's commented he looks great. Some people are suggesting this is actually an indication of a smart move and that he is trying to get down to the weight naturally, so it's not going to be all at once where he cuts that last 15 pounds in water weight. He's going to be just naturally lighter, and the cut will be easier closer to the fight. That is an appropriate way to do it. Will it be too much? That is yet to be seen. Now, it's also, we're doing, Moraes fought at featherweight before. Back in 2011, he fought at featherweight. So he's not this cookie cutter bantamweight guy who can only make bantamweight. He's big enough to go to featherweight and succeed. So it's not like he's going to be too small. At the same time, it's not like he's going to be this guy who always going to come in and just be massive and have a massive advantage over physically. Now, at bantamweight, Aldo's absolutely going to lose some speed advantage. That's a very crucial aspect of this. He'll gain some height, he'll gain some length, some general size, but speed is an issue when you're going down a division, especially when you rely on speed and technique. It's a major concern here. How does it impact his style? Again, he relies so much on speed to do damage that it could hurt him there. Very well could hurt, especially against a lot of opposition. It might be interesting to see him look to mix in some takedowns. We've seen him utilize takedowns at times. Go back to the Mark Hominick fight. He used takedowns. That's a long time ago. But he could be one of these guys who looks to reinvent himself, uses takedowns, uses jiu-jitsu, and that's when his size becomes a factor. Bring it to bear on his opposition. Fight night, and going back to the weight thing as well. Weigh-in day could be interesting to see how he does, see if he makes the weight. If he doesn't make the weight, see if there's an issue there. It'll be very, very interesting. There's also some concern, again, going back to that top position offense. If he attempts to do that, and it could be uncomfortable for him, take him out of his wheelhouse, and possibly tax his cardio further. The second scenario, which I think is equally, if not more important, which is hard to believe, and again, a lot of people won't tell you this, won't agree with me, it's a post-title fight letdown scenario for Marlon Moraes. Now, Moraes is coming off that title fight loss against Henry Cejudo. If you think back to his debut, he lost a split decision to Rafael Sunset, which ended a massive winning streak. And he didn't lose his WSOF title, but as soon as you lose that fight, some of that shine comes off you, and he had to rebuild himself. He had beaten Assunção in impressive fashion. He probably fights the title very soon after he gets to the UFC. But instead, he had to win multiple fights in impressive fashion to get back to that opportunity. Now, he got finished. He had a fight where he was actually winning it. He got finished. He got put out of there by Cejudo. He is certainly taking a step back. How does he recover from that physically? How does he recover from that mentally? It's a major concern. Where is he at? For Aldo, he's a former champion looking for a new lease on life. He recognizes that there's some desperation here. He's coming down needing to win this fight. He comes down needing to, pick up this victory and get himself in line for a shot at the title. He knows with a win or two here, he could be very much in contention. For Moraes, he takes a step back. It's hard to swallow in this scenario for him to realize he has to pick up a couple victories before he's back in there. Different levels of motivation are certainly a factor. Stylistically, it's kind of a mirror matchup. Both guys are very skilled in a lot of the same areas. Both fighters like to be patient. They like to engage with striking-based offense, good kicking games, good hands, not overextend. They can counter. When Aldo pushes too hard, he gets himself in trouble, and that's something worth noting here. So he's going to want to hold back a little bit, and Moraes is a heavy counter striker. So that actually could mess things up a little bit and make this a bit of a staring contest at times where you're throwing single strikes, but no one's really stepping in and committing. Now, Aldo does fight long very effectively, and we saw that against Frankie Edgar on multiple occasions. It limits the impact of his opponent, and if he can utilize his reach and his length at bantamweight with great success, we could see him on that alone make himself a factor in the division. When he fought Renato Moicano, he maintained distance, he landed strikes, he limited the damage, and eventually found the body. I think he needs to find a little bit better of a balance in offensive output and cardio conservation. He needs to find a way to push the pace, land enough offense, but at the same time not wear himself out. Now, Moraes' counter-heavy style tends to get him a little bit in trouble if his opponent can outwork him. And if he struggles with the reach of his opponent and can't find Aldo when he counters, that's a major concern as well. Moraes is very good when he goes first. He's got devastating offense, brutal kicks, good hands, good power overall. He's very thick and heavily muscled, can generate a lot of offense. But is that enough to win this fight if he doesn't do that, if he can't find those strikes? If Aldo's drained by the cut, he could be vulnerable, and Moraes could get him out of there, absolutely. Moraes' style is not going to push a pace that Aldo can't maintain. In fact, Aldo's going to welcome the pace that Moraes engages, and that's where he does his best work. I think it's more, obviously if Aldo doesn't look good, that just throws everything out the window, and it doesn't matter anything, Aldo's going to struggle. Instead, though, I'm going to bank on him making the weight cut effectively and coming out looking good, or possibly missing weight and not draining himself and coming in as a legit 145er. But what I'm looking at is I'm anticipating that Moraes is going to be a bit of a bad spot here. Again, this is the second key loss in his UFC career. He dug himself out of a hole the first time. He won't have a great performance this time around. He's going to come out flat. We've seen Kelvin Gastelum against Darren Till. That post-title fight letdown scenario is legitimate, is real. And again, it doesn't apply all the time, but it applies more often than not. And when two fighters are close, if you have one coming in off a title fight loss, they take a step back in their performance. They just don't have that motivation. They don't have that edge that other guys do, and I think that shows up here. I like Aldo to be a little more active at 135 pounds. I like him to be a little more impactful. I think he'll land some decent strikes here. I think it'll be a close fight. Moraes' patient approach will get him in a little bit of trouble, get him behind on the numbers like he did against Rafael Assunção, and my prediction is Jose Aldo to defeat Marlon Moraes by decision. We move now to the first of 3 consecutive UFC title fights, the first of which going down in the UFC women's bantamweight division as the champion, the double champ, the bantamweight and featherweight champion, the women's GOAT, one of the greatest of all time general, regardless of gender, Amanda the Lioness Nunes, 17-4-0, puts her title on the line against number 1 ranked Iron Lady Germaine Randamie with a current record of 8 wins and 3 defeats. Now, Nunes is rolling 9 consecutive victories. She just added Holly Holm to a list that continues to impress, that already includes Valentina Shevchenko, Miesha Tate, Ronda Rousey, Cyborg, Raquel Pennington, Sarah McMahon, and GDR here. She's had 4 title defenses plus the 145-pound title win. It has been an impressive run in a division, in a conversation that was dominated by Ronda Rousey and dominated by Cyborg. She just blew past both limits, and here's all the victories that I need to get plus more to make myself the undisputed number 1 ranked fighter in female mixed martial arts today. Now, for Germaine, she has been rolling as well, 5 consecutive wins, and she's beaten some good competition. Aspen Ladd, a bit of controversial victory, the aforementioned Raquel Pennington, won the 145-pound title briefly against Holly Holm. Her last loss all the way back in 2013 against Amanda Nunes, which we'll talk about momentarily. Now, Randamie is 1 inch taller. She'll have a 2-inch reach advantage. Nunes is the younger fighter by 4 years, and both girls will fight at 145 pounds, which is worth noting. So it's not like they're small 135-pounders. They could go up, and they absolutely can go up. They have gone up. Now, as I said, they fought back in 2014. Nunes won the fight by TKO in the first round. It was a bit of a questionable stoppage, but not really. It was warranted. I picked Nunes in that matchup. It was a minor upset. She was a slight dog. Since that fight, Nunes went on to lose to Kat Zingano in a crazy back-and-forth matchup, and then went on her roll since then, has not lost. For Randamie, she has gone undefeated as well since, so she certainly has been impressive. Now, in that first fight, Nunes landed 1 takedown. She outlanded the strikes 14-1 at significant strikes prior to the stoppage. Nunes came as she was a slight dog. I picked her in that fight. I was very happy with that prediction, recognizing that Germaine simply was struggling with her takedown defense and was a major issue. There was limited striking distance where they were kind of at range, some thrown back and forth, but ultimately what happened was Nunes caught a kick, used the clinch and a combination with a trip to take her down along the cage. She moved almost directly into mount and started dropping elbows and strikes, and Germaine was blocking him. She had her elbows up, a high guard, trying to block. A lot of stuff was getting through. It was not a good visual. She was taking a beating, and it seemed like she just was lost on her back. There was no way she was getting out of the position, and the official allowed it to go on as long as he could before eventually he stepped in. And Germaine, she was absolutely disappointed with the outcome, but she wasn't upset with the stoppage. I said it was questionable because she wasn't taking ridiculous amounts of damage, but she was taking enough, so it was certainly warranted. Now, Nunes in that fight exploited a massive gap in GDR's defensive game. Does that gap still exist? That is the burning question when it comes to this fight. Takedown defense was a massive concern for Randamie. It still is. If you include her Strikeforce fights, she had given up 11 takedowns over 5 fights, her Strikeforce career in her early UFC run, leading up to the Nunes matchup, including the Nunes matchup. She was 3-2 over that span with a split decision win over Julie Kedzie. In a fight, she gave up multiple takedowns. So basically struggling to a 500 fighter in that stretch. Since the Nunes loss, she has given up 0 takedowns on 22 takedown attempts. She's been with AKA for a while now. She's a Jiu-Jitsu purple belt. Her takedown defense has improved significantly. As I said, she's undefeated in that span, but can she stay vertical against Nunes? That's the burning question. Has she improved to the point where she can take on a wrestler with the grappling skills of Amanda Nunes and make it count defensively? Now, one of the keys to why Germaine is so successful is her distance management. When she fought Raquel Pennington, who she defended multiple takedowns against, she was able to strike from range, she kicked from range, but she never overcommitted. She's so technical, so impactful, but never rushes forward. Every time Raquel attempted to close the distance, it was from far out, and Germaine was able to recognize the takedown attempt, clinch, raise her level to a more comfortable position in the clinch position, and land strikes. Or she was able to angle off a little bit, take away some of that forward pressure, and almost dismiss Pennington's takedown attempts, not allow that pressure to get the brunt force of her, and ultimately is able to defend it. And then once she's in the clinch, she can either do damage or she can get out of the position and reset, and that's why she's so effective. Her jab is very good. She's got power in her right hand. She mixes in her low kicks, but again, she never overcommits. Never gives you an opportunity to get her off balance and take her down. Against Pennington, a fight which was similar to what this could be, obviously maybe a higher level, as we've known Nunes has already blasted Pennington out of there. Her cardio looked good in the third round, Germaine's did. Could that continue in rounds 4 or 5? I don't know. Nunes I think she'll push her harder than Pennington did if it plays out like that. Again, that's a question to be answered on fight night. Now, Nunes is super confident coming to this matchup. Super confident. She hits extremely hard. Her jiu-jitsu is good. Her cardio has been improved. Stopping Holly Holm and Cyborg is impressive. Bullying Raquel Pennington into a shell of herself is impressive. Beating Shevchenko, who's a little bit undersized in close fights, is still very impressive. Knocking out Ronda Rousey is nothing to... It was what needed to happen. Same with Miesha Tate at that point in their career. Now, Nunes showed she can beat a dangerous striker in Cyborg, and she showed she can beat a technically skilled striker in Holly Holm, but Germaine presents both. She's a mixture of danger, and she's technically sound, and I don't think she's going to be intimidated by Amanda Nunes. Can Nunes replicate those takedowns? Possibly. 3 takedowns against Pennington in a very decisive fight. For the most part, they were reactive. Catch Pennington coming forward and take her down, not Germaine's style. I think Germaine's going to do a good job of limiting those opportunities. Pennington had success when she pushed forward and she was able to land some offense. Conservatively, again, don't overextend, but just be aggressive. Be, willing to throw. Let your hands go. I think Holly Holm was way too defensive, got her finished. Cyborg was way too reckless and just walked into some hammer shots and got put away. Look for Germaine to manage the distance effectively, land technical strikes, be impactful with those strikes, but not open herself up. Counter as Nunes pushes forward. Maybe Amanda gets a little bit reckless here. I think she'll do damage in the clinch when they tie up, and she's going to avoid the takedowns. I think Amanda's going to come out and strike with her. I think any takedown she looks for could very well be just maybe rushed a little bit and a little bit overzealous looking for those opportunities. And I think Germaine's going to catch her. I I think she's going to hurt her, and I think we're going to see something that's going to shock a lot of people, but I don't think Germaine's the type of... Germaine, if you stand and bang with her, she's going to win that fight. And my prediction is Germaine de Randamie to defeat Amanda Nunes and capture the women's bantamweight title. Germaine's going to do it by knockout. Title fight number 2 in the co-main event of the evening goes down in the UFC's featherweight division as the reigning champion Max Blessed Holloway, 20 wins and 4 losses, takes on the number 1 contender Alexander the Great Volkanovski, 19 wins, 1 defeat, and coming in with a lot of momentum. Now, Max is coming off his first win since a lightweight interim title fight loss to Dustin Poirier as a title defense against Frankie Edgar. Very impressive. He had won 13 in a row, 5 fights involving title fights. The title belt. For Volkanovski, he has won 17 consecutive fights. 7-0 in the UFC. He beat Chad Mendes in very impressive fashion. I wouldn't say definitive. Obviously definitive in the fact he put him away, but still not a complete performance. He beat Jose Aldo, a nice escalation of opposition to get him here. Darren Elkins before that is a tough out for anybody. He beat him pillar to post, and now here he is fighting for the title. Physically, Max 5 inches taller. Volkanovski will have a 2-inch reach advantage, which is interesting considering the height differential. Max is the younger fighter by 3 years. It's worth noting, though, Max started his pro career 2 years earlier than Alexander. Now, Max, he is a timing-based fighter. He attacks you, he slides out of range. When you attack, he limits the impact of your offense. He counters, he turns your forward progress against you. He's incredibly frustrating. His volume is excellent, 6.29 strikes landed per minute, over 100 significant strikes in 6 of his last 7 fights, with his only off-performance, quote-unquote off-performance, 94 significant strikes against Anthony Pettis in a fight he finished late. He could have slipped the 6 remaining strikes into that last little bit of time to get to that number. He throws a nice variety of offense, which is awesome. It's huge. He's able to mix up his strikes, works in his kicks. Again, he just is very diverse. So getting his timing down is difficult. Matching his output is difficult. Dealing with the variety is even more difficult, and the fact that he never gets tired. He's just a very difficult fighter to deal with. He landed more strikes than Dustin Poirier, but the difference was Poirier had more pop. He's a bigger man at lightweight. He hurt him a couple of times. The volume was close and the impact was greater, and that's what gave Poirier the edge in that fight. Very competitive fight, very good fight, but Dustin won it. So can Volkanovski replicate those areas of success? Volk absolutely has power. But does he have that combo of power, striking variety, and cardio to replicate Poirier's offensive success? That's a great question. Volk hits very hard. He's got big power on the feet. He's a capable wrestler with solid ground and pound, which we'll talk about momentarily. On the feet, he throws a nice lead left jab. He's got power in his right hand. He mixes in his kicks pretty decently. Against Jose Aldo, he stayed busier than Aldo and won the fight because of activity. Aldo wasn't throwing in that matchup. Really did not do very well in that fight. When he fought Mendes, lots of pressure early on. He landed some big shots on Mendes. He hurt Mendes, but he wasn't overextending himself, which was good. At the same time, he was getting hurt by Chad. Chad had a lot of success, busted him up. Volk was bleeding pretty good in that fight. It could be argued that Volkanovski was losing the matchup right up until the finish. He was busted up, getting taken down, getting hit with some shots, and he looked hurt. He looked a little bit tired, but he gutted it out and got Chad out of there, which was very impressive. When he fought Aldo, he used the clinch very effectively to kind of put Aldo on the cage. He landed 0 takedowns in the Mendes-Aldo fight, over 3 overall, versus Aldo at least, and I don't think he attempted any takedowns against Mendes. So that took away one of his key weapons. Before the Mendes fight, he took each of his opponents down at least once. He landed 16 takedowns over his first 5 UFC fights. It was a key aspect of his offense. Now, he didn't need takedowns against Mendes in a fight. Again, he could have been losing, but Mendes faded and was finished. He didn't need takedowns against Aldo because Aldo wasn't engaging at a rate that was... he just wasn't going to win that fight with 29 significant strikes landed. Volkanovski landed 95, blew him out of the water that way. Had Aldo been closer to 60 or 70, and that probably diminishes Volk's offense, it's a different story. But when you look at Max Holloway, you'd say, where does Volk slip in here? Where does he win this fight? Holloway has excellent takedown defense, so he's hard to take down. Not impossible, but hard. Good cardio, excellent cardio, some of the best cardio in the business. Works extremely well. Excellent work rate. He never slows down. He's not going to throw 29 significant strikes. Those are the 3 areas that Volk has exploited, and without them being vulnerabilities in his opponent, he could struggle. Volk made up for one of those, the loss of one of those, specifically the takedowns, by gains in other areas. That won't be an option here. Holloway is a mentally strong fighter. He overcame a long layoff to beat Ortega. He rebounded the post-title fight letdown from the loss to Poirier to beat a very difficult opponent in Frankie Edgar. So the way I look at this, unless Volkanovski can hurt him with a big shot early, or get him out of there early, or he's consistently gets in and lands and hurts and backs him up, and again, anybody is vulnerable, especially when you've been in the wars that Holloway's been in. He could find himself on the wrong end of a punch that puts him down and changes his career forever, and that could be this fight. but that's going to be difficult. And I think Volkanovski's going to struggle if he can't find that one-hitter quitter, or at least that one-hitter change the complexion of the fight. I don't think it's a thing. Max, I think he's going to land more strikes. He's going to be more impactful. He's not going to slow down. Volkanovski will. Max could find success on the floor, which could be shocking, especially if Volk goes for a desperation takedown. If he gets tired, we could absolutely see that. There could be a submission there for Max to scoop up. He's been very good if he gets his opponent in his neck. Ultimately, I think we're going to see rounds 3, 4, and 5, Max just pushing Volkanovski, doing damage, limiting what comes back the other way. And my prediction is Max Holloway to defeat Alexander Volkanovski by TKO. And finally, we move to the main event of the evening, the third and final title fight of our lineup, as the UFC's welterweight title is on the line, as the Nigerian Nightmare, the UFC welterweight champion Kamaru Usman, 15-1-0, takes in the number 2 ranked Colby Chaos Covington, 14-1-0, the former interim champion. These two guys have been chomping at the bit. Two big dogs in a yard looking to fight. We're finally going to see it. Hopefully, knock on wood. Now, Usman has won 14 consecutive fights, 10 in the UFC. He's coming off a welterweight title victory over Tyron Woodley, a fight I correctly predicted, won a lot of money that night. This is his first attempt at title defense, and as we know, a lot of people say you're not a champion until you defend that title at least once. For Covington, he has won 7 consecutive fights. He is 10-1 in the UFC. He won the interim title against Rafael dos Anjos. He was stripped of the title. He then turned around and he defeated Robbie Lawler in his last fight, so very impressive. And I will say his one loss against Warlley Alves, a fight I got bang on, saying Alves would catch him along the cage with this guillotine choke and put him out, so I'm happy to say I got that one correct. Not to toot my own horn, but doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Now, Usman, 1 inch taller, 4-inch reach advantage. Covington is the younger man by a year, though, so worth noting. Now, they faced some similar competition along the way. Both guys beat Rafael dos Anjos fairly decisively. Both guys beat Damian Maia with relative ease. The aforementioned Warlley Alves is the divergence from the pattern. Covington, as it was submitted, Usman won a fairly one-sided decision, but they were certainly at different points of their careers. I would say Usman much more recent, winning that fight, where Covington was much earlier in his career and development. Now, what you're looking at here are two very good wrestlers. Covington was a NCAA Division I wrestler. Usman was a champion and NCAA Division II wrestler. Very good. Never crossed paths. We're wrestling around the same time, so it's very difficult to assess which one of these two individuals. And Chael Sonnen does an excellent job of breaking down, but which one of these two guys is the better wrestler. But what we're worried about here is mixed martial arts and how their approach translates to the cage. Now, what we have here are two guys who are heavy wrestler/pressure-based fighters with improving striking and very good cardio. So the question is, who can impose their will on the other? So what are they looking to do? For Usman, he's more of a control fighter physically. He likes to shut you down along the cage, beat you up, take you down, and continue that punishment. He can work at distance, but ultimately he's his best when he can physically impose his will upon you. For Colby Covington, he's more of a pace-based fighter. He's in your face. He's landing strikes. He's close. He'll hold you down when he needs to. He'll land little shots here and there. And he just keeps going, and you just can't match his pace. And eventually, you wear down, and you find yourself behind the scorecards, discouraged, exhausted, and just not producing like you need to. Covington averages 5.69 takedowns per fight. Usman just 3.96. When you look at their numbers against RDA, so a common foe with very good takedown numbers, versus RDA, Usman landed 12 takedowns. Covington landed 7, both very impressive. But it's worth noting Covington gave up a trio of takedowns against RDA in that fight. Usman has never been taken down in the UFC. RDA attempted 1, 0 for 1. Woodley attempted 1, 0 for 1. So Covington gave up 3 against RDA. He gave up 2 against Young Kim a couple years back. His takedown defense 78%, but does this suggest that Usman can take him down? Or has, on the flip side of things, have fighters, focus more on takedowns against Covington than they have on Usman, or face, it's a great question. We could surmise from these numbers that that's what it suggests, but we don't know that until these two square off. I would lean towards Usman winning the wrestling as the more physically imposing, slightly larger fighter. Covington's a big, strong welterweight as well, but I think Usman just comes off as a little more physically imposing. And I would like to believe the slightly larger man has a greater advantage in this scenario. So that's worth taking note of. His ability to control Tyron Woodley along the cage was impressive. Woodley at times seemed lost and got tired, but still is a very impressive performance to shut down Woodley's wrestling. Now, there is the potential that Covington could outlast him here, defend through rounds 1 and 2, and then take over rounds 3 and 4 and 5 with his cardio. But Usman's got amazing cardio of his own, and he's not one to slow down either. He's shown that on multiple occasions. And Covington, we've seen at times, will take the odd round and just, I don't want to say coast, but he's not as vicious, he's not as productive with his offense, and he lets things slip a little bit, and then he just ramps it back up. But against Usman, you don't want to do that because it gives him position to get rolling, and suddenly that downhill momentum, and you're overwhelmed, and suddenly you're in trouble and can't get back going. So it's a very interesting dynamic to see how that plays out. If we get a scenario where two good wrestlers neutralize each other and we wind up with a striking-based battle, who wins that fight? Good question. Over Usman's last two fights, he's landed over 100 significant strikes. 141 versus Woodley, 130 versus RDA. Lots of clinch fighting, which is worth noting. Covington 179 versus Lawler, hugely impressive. 99 versus RDA, so it's in the same ballpark. He showed versus Maia he can win a fight without landing takedowns. Usman did the same thing. Now, I would give Covington maybe a bit of a speed advantage. I don't know if I'm correct in stating that. I feel that's the way it goes, but I don't know. Usman, though, is the more impactful striker. He hits harder, and Covington can be hit. We saw in the Damian Maia fight, and I've said this multiple occasions. That's why I picked Robbie Lawler to beat him. I felt he could be hit. Lawler just fought poorly, didn't let his hands go, and again succumbed to Covington's pressure. Maia hit him a couple of times and hurt him. If Usman hits you, you're going to be in trouble. You saw him destroy Sergio Moraes, and I'm not saying he's going to put Covington down with one punch, but he's certainly going to hurt him. He's certainly going to back him up, and it's going to weigh well with the judges if he can land more than on multiple occasions. In this fight, I like the more physical nature of Usman to hold up against Covington's pace, because I think Usman can match his pace, but I don't think Covington can match his physicality. If Covington wanted to stick to the outside and use pace and movement to beat Usman and use his striking from range, I could see that working for him. But he's not that type of fighter. His style is going to bring him into the range of Kamaru. He's going to bring him in close, and it's going to tie him up, and it's just not going to work out for him consistently enough to win this fight. This is a very good fight. Embrace the grind. It might not be the most exciting fight. It's going to be a positional battle. We'll see how it plays out. I think Usman controls him on the cage. Covington will be forced to try and work from distance, which isn't his forte. And again, he's not going to like that. He'll be plan B, plan C. Usman wins those clinches, lands a few takedowns, is the more impactful striker overall, and my prediction is Kamaru Usman to defeat Colby Covington by decision. So those are my 5 main card predictions for UFC 245. Very much looking forward to the card. Awesome prelims, which I'll be making available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. You can check them out for free, no charge. Just head over there. Please comment, like my video, share my video if you're on Twitter. Anything you want to do to just help. I always appreciate the support. I'm always around via emails from my website. You can contact me or via Facebook. Just again, it's going to be an awesome night of fights. Very much looking forward. So I'll do my best to be as active as I possibly can on Twitter. It's going to be very cool to see 3 title fights and some other high profile matchups with Aldo versus Moraes and Faber versus Jan. Good night of fights. And again, the second last fight of the year. Sometimes this feels like it should wrap up the year. The last card of the year should be good as well. And of course, I'm looking for 300 victories. I need 14 over the last 2 events. We'll see how it plays out. Thank you very much for tuning in, guys. Coming off a huge night, undefeated 10-0-2, one last pop, and a huge bet pack return on both nights. Let's see if we can cash in one more time before the holidays. We'll get to another event, I guess, left before that as well. So either way, thanks for tuning in, guys. I will talk to you soon. Enjoy the fights. Hi.